So it seems economists are predicting a recession for next year, although this isn't too shocking. However, the number is certainly going up. You can see here, this is over at NDR Research, I think it's like Ned Davis. They're predicting 98% chance of recession. So they're basically saying it's going to happen. We've been talking about this stuff on the channel, so obviously you guys aren't too surprised. And this is your daily Uncut news. So not only is NDR and sort of smaller hedge funds saying equities aren't so great, recession's coming. Goldman and BlackRock is also saying the same thing, and you guys have been seeing this in the market. There's essentially a sell-off and retreat to safety, and basically, the reason that we stay in this way is because essentially the hedge funds, big investment banks, they have to advise their big money clients about what to do, and big money is like, hey, what's going on over there? What are you guys doing with my money? My money safe? Either make me money or get me out. And Goldman's always like, well, we'll protect your money. Just don't pull your money out from us, because then remember, essentially how they make money is by management fees. So they're just advising people to be out of risky stuff like stocks, and that's why you see these things moving into essentially dollar and safe things. One of the things though that is alarming is that the weakening of global currencies and the weakening of global bonds. This is essentially led by the UK. People just don't have any faith in the new prime minister. This is Truss. We talked about this before. And basically, their deficit spending, it's like the largest tax cut in 50 years. Plus, they're borrowing in order to pay for these rising energy costs. So the UK is in a tough spot, and the market just doesn't believe they can pull it off. Winter is coming. You guys know this in Europe. And, one of the things is that we've been watching what is Russia going to do. They could, theoretically completely cut off the rest of Europe from energy, and that'll send energy prices, soaring, and also the markets will definitely crash after that. So we'll see. We can already see that gas prices are going up a bit. You get different words on what the actual situation is, because essentially governments in Europe, they want to keep their people calm. So like, hey, everything's okay, we got it under control, but markets don't believe it. And when people in Europe look at their gas bill, look at their electricity bill, et cetera, they know things are going up. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts of where you are, if you feel like energy is up or down in terms of electricity or gasoline price. And we'll see what happens this winter. And this is sort of the big one, is where, remember, everyone on TV was telling you that, inflation's coming down, it's peaked, it's coming down, and it came out higher than normal. And that was even though gas came down, right? Inflation was still higher than what we had thought. And so as winter comes back up, if energy spikes in price, you could have some real scary times ahead. So just do be aware of that. Also, too, this is something that we know is happening. Remember, Putin made that announcement that they're going to be drafting people. In fact, there's a lot of Russians resisting the draft, essentially. This is a situation where someone was, essentially a gunman was shooting at a recruiting officer in Russia. And, not only we have protests in several cities, we have many Russians fleeing to the border. They just, and you guys, I'm sure you guys get this. It's like, well, what's my choice? I can go to prison, be forced from the military, or try to get out of the country and not have to fight against my brothers and sisters in Ukraine. So I do emphasize with Russians, and I just hope someone removes Putin and ends this madness, to be fairly frank. It's gotten so bad, and when I saw this, I don't know if you guys saw this one. This was a few days ago. My wife mentioned to me. It was actually in the Korean news. Russians were actually Googling how to break your arm, how to break your leg, these kind of things, basically how to injure yourself so you don't have to serve in the military, because not everyone can just run to the border, right? And so this is a real serious thing, and it shows that there are Russians with a moral conscience that don't want to go to a war that they don't believe in. And I'm fully in support of just regular Russian citizens saying, you know what, I'm not going to do it. And in this regard, maybe this is what will be how the war ends, where people is like, I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to fight in Putin's war. So keep an eye on this thing, and this is a thing. I mean, Putin's like telling people, recruiting in the military, and you got 4 hours to say, pack up your bags and say goodbye to your family. So this is sort of the thing that people are facing over there. Also too, the war has cost the world economy. You guys can see this here, 2.8 trillion. It's just going to be tough now coming out of it. And as I mentioned to you guys last year, going into it, I was thinking food prices and food stocks would be good, and the defense stocks would be good. That turned out to be true. Oil obviously was good as well. Coming out of the war, I have a feeling that if we end up coming out of this thing, any kind of construction companies that are going to be part of the rebuilding of Ukraine, will probably do very, very well. I can tell you that will be a thing. Because I keep seeing that not only as the U.S. Congress keeps passing budgets to send money to Ukraine, I just know that there's always companies out there that profit off this stuff. It's war profiteering. It's just how the world works. I've seen it enough times. We saw it with Iraq, right? A bunch of companies made a ton of money after Baghdad was invaded, and for those of you old enough, you'll know this. And so I'm just telling you the reality. And so any kind of company that benefits from the rebuilding of Ukraine after this war ends will do well. That's just the reality. Also, too, facing slowdown in China. There's different estimates out there. So some of the essentially the banks are saying China is going to recover by the second half of 2023. The lockdowns are still in place, and they're talking about reopening, but people are saying it's not going to happen anytime soon. So we'll see on that. One of the things that I've pointed out to you guys also on this channel, and I say this thing over and over again, all these other people out there who are bullish on China, who don't speak Chinese, have never been in China, they don't know what the heck they're talking about. I'm just telling you guys. I used to teach at Tsinghua University, which is a top school in China. I also lived in Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen, 3 cities there. I worked there, I lived there. And, I knew this was happening. Basically, the birth rates are slowing and the growth is slowing. And you can see this here. This is the first time since 1990 where other countries in Asia are going to be growing faster than China. Those are the projections. And sort of what you're looking at here is, you can see right here, this is from the World Bank. They're projecting 2.8% growth. This is down from 4 and 5% growth that was sort of projected. So at least they're growing, but just not crazy rates. Because before, last year they were growing like 8.1%, right? So this is a massive slowdown. And then compared to other countries in Asia, which are going to be averaging about 5.3%. So China is no longer the leader. We keep telling you guys it's going to be India or Vietnam. It's looking like also too Indonesia is the kind of the dark horse, which I didn't predict, right? So I don't know everything, but we're catching up very quickly. Point being is that China is not necessarily the powerhouse of growth of what people used to think. Yes, it has a big population, we all know that. The problem is they're getting too close to Russia, and certainly creating some tensions between the U.S. and China. And then you keep seeing these bad news about China's considering, or at least we're preparing for the possibility that they may or may not ever invade Taiwan. So do be aware of these things. So yes, China is slowing down, and we were right on that. Also, too, I'm in Korea. We watch this thing every single day. $1 is like over 1,400 won, which is just unreal. I think it's like the highest. Let's see, what is this here? 13 years. It's crazy. And it's actually kind of funny because I first came to Korea back in 2009, which is exactly sort of around these levels when the dollar was really, really strong. And essentially, I told you guys before, if you're looking to live abroad, looking to travel, now's the time to go. The dollar's strong. It may be like this for another year or so, and the dollar can stay elevated. I don't know if it can keep going higher. I mean, the news is getting pretty bad. It depends what happens with the British pound. If that thing just completely collapses, different people are making different projections on that. But I think that was the one to watch, and you just don't know. And so that's why with this uncertainty, people are like, you know what? I just want dollars, and I keep telling you guys that this is just faith in the U.S. economy. Essentially, if everyone else has uncertainty, one thing is certain is the U.S. economy is okay. And this is sort of where I know things look bearish, but overall, if you bet on the Americans and you bet on the U.S. System, that they generally do really, really well. So I don't ever think that I'm anti-American. It's completely untrue. I'm telling you, I would rather take a bet on the USA than I would on China. I don't think it's crazy. But don't discount other countries. There are other countries in the world. Just right now, it's just most people are worried about growth scares. So that's the thing. Also, too, regarding the China thing, so Morgan Stanley, they're saying next spring they're going to probably reopening. No one knows for sure, but they can't stay closed forever because basically what's going on in China is, if you guys don't understand how the Chinese system works, they're always concerned about maintaining control and keeping citizens from protesting. If you ever live in China, you'll see it all the time. I'll give you a simple example. So people will sell stuff on the street, right? They're not supposed to. They're supposed to have a permit or whatever. Someone comes and says, "Hey, the police are coming! The police are coming!" And then everyone picks up all their stuff and runs away for half an hour. The police come, they look around, police go away, people put their stuff back. What I'm saying is there's resistance every day with stuff like that. This is one example, and other situations that you have where the government wants to come in and take someone's home, and you'll see it. The government will hire basically thugs. to come and just beat people out of their homes. And people don't like that. Of course not. You don't want your home stolen away from you. And so these kind of situations, people actually do rise up and protest the same way that they went to the banks. I believe this was in Henan province, where remember the banks just ran away with people's money, and people like just wait outside the bank and like give me back our money. And so the government is always concerned about social unrest in China. It is a real thing. Think of it this way: we have Americans that get really upset. Like if you tell them to wear a mask, and that's a real thing. People like get really upset about it, you know. And just imagine like the difference of like in China, like if someone says, "Hey, you put your money in the bank account, you know, and that bank's going to close and just they're going to run away." So the difference in like things people get upset about is really, really different. I'm saying like, think about just if we did that to Americans, how pissed off people would be. So that's the kind of situations that we're facing in China, to where like there's really egregious things. Or another example that happens in China, you'll always read about in the news where like a government politician will hit someone with their car and kill someone, and then the politician will face no, you know, penalties or anything like that, and then people go and like protest and stuff, and it's a real thing, these kind of stuff. So I mention this stuff is because China's always trying to balance control and keeping the citizens from basically overthrowing the government. And this is where sort of like one thing that always makes me nervous, I'm just telling you, is China will always try to stir up, you know, anti-Japan or anti-Taiwan kind of sentiment when they feel like the citizens are getting too mad at them. That's just a common thing. One of the things, though, that is also happening, there was a couple things. So one, as you can see here, the USA is sort of withdrawing from some countries, and China is kind of stepping in. So this is a situation where they may or may not be lending money to Pakistan. There was another article too, which is really interesting, where Chinese investors are looking up at buying Siberia of all places. But the basic gist of it is, this is something that Chinese people do. They do it in Africa, to where they'll lend money to countries can't pay it back, and then China will come in and just basically take all the land. It's a land grab. And so certainly there is a kind of economic Cold War, if you want to call it, between the U.S. and China, and sort of countries are picking sides. As of yet, though, it's not really a hot war, and let's hope it doesn't turn into that. But I just want you to be aware that this is what we're talking about. At the end of the day, though, I'll make the bet on America. That's something I've mentioned to you guys several times. And so just be leery of people who are just like, hey, you got to buy China. And they don't speak Chinese and they've never been to China. So just be careful of those kind of people. Also, too, this is actually kind of an interesting one. The Philippines, they're kicking out, on the theme of China, they're kicking out Chinese people from the Philippines. Evidently, there's a bunch of like illegal gambling and online casino stuff. It's like deporting 40,000 people. It's like, what? And if you don't know about Philippines is an interesting place. It's got some really beautiful places. We like to go to Boracay. And for those of you who have ever been to Boracay, please give a shout out to Boracay. I had Filipino students actually when I was in Korea. It's really interesting. The Koreans hire Filipinos to come and teach English in Korea, which is really quite fascinating. And the Filipinos that I've met are these the ones that come to education and stuff like that, because I had graduate students. They were graduate students, so they already graduated, right? And they're doing like their master's degree, and those would be my students. And these students were the politest and kindest students. I kid you not. So this is a shout out to Filipinos. But the dark side of the Philippines is there's a lot of corruption and crime. And there's a real wide range between the rich and the poor in the Philippines. That's a real thing. And I didn't know about this, though. I didn't know about online casinos and like Chinese, but I'm not shocked. The other thing, too, about Philippines is there's like a big weapons trade. That's a real thing. There's like gangsters and the whole 9 yards. So Philippines is a really big place, and that's just part of it. And I could talk all and on about Philippines, but I have a very positive, what's the right word to say, emotions or feelings towards Filipinos, and Filipinos that you meet in the USA. Oftentimes, they're really, really a lot of nurses, actually, and they're all over LA. So anyway, but Philippines is a big place. So, and yes, they have online casinos, and Filipinos are not Chinese. Just so you know. This is the other thing, too, which is interesting, because we were talking about, you know, what's going on in the UK and their deficit spending, and their economy is kind of in a shambles. Here in USA, it's like we're always trying to balance the budget. I say here, sorry, I'm in Korea, but you know, I'm American. But this one's an interesting one, because I think more Americans are going to get irritated by this. I just keep reading the headlines that we just keep sending more and more money to Ukraine. And I get it, guys. I really get it. So, you know, if you're an American and you're like, okay, I don't have enough money to pay my gas bill, why are we sending money to another country? And essentially that's why defense contractors and any kind of construction contractors or people who send food, anything that's related to that, is getting money, essentially what we're talking about. So the money isn't necessarily going to Ukraine per se. It is, but it's also going to certain American companies that do benefit from that, and then they send it all to Ukraine. So that's part of it. But they're going to keep sending money to Ukraine. I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. So just keeping it real with you guys. But I do completely understand the criticisms of like, why are you sending money there when we should be building schools here? I really get it. And the other thing is too is going around the world is Abe, which we talked about. I think that was a month ago already. Was assassinated, and his funeral was happening as well. And there's a lot of things going on in the world, and I can understand why so much focus in Ukraine. Why not we talk about other countries as well? And my opinion. I mean, Japan, Korea, they should be strong allies to the USA, and just we should be doing all we can to maintain a relationship with them, and that helps us to form some solidarity against China and Russia and some of these other powers. So that's why I mentioned all this stuff. I so you guys, I really get it. I understand why people would be critical of sending so much money to Ukraine when there's other countries we could be forming better alliances with, in my opinion. So, like for example, and this is something that you'll hear no politician ever talk about this, but I'm just telling you it's real. Why don't we ever consider like moving offices from China and putting them in Japan? They have a workforce there. Their economy is slowing. It would be mutually beneficial. Well, who knows? But what do I know? So, but I think we should have closer ties to Japan and Korea, both of them. And this also relates to our schools. A big problem in USA, and this is something I want to mention to you guys. It just came. There's a new federal report. Over half our schools in the USA have a teacher and staffing shortage. It is a real problem. We talked about nursing shortage before, but the teacher and school staff shortage is also an equally big problem. So if you're out looking for a job as the recession happens, there's never going to be an end of need for good teachers. I will repeat that. And I spent 10 years as a professor. I believe in education. It saddens me when I read comments on YouTube of just frankly people who don't respect education. I just don't know what else to say about that, and it's sad. It shows we have a problem at the home in USA. Families aren't emphasizing education. And it just reminds me, and it's something I just tell you guys who are watching the show. There's going to be a greater divide between rich and poor, a greater divide between educated and uneducated. So if you want to do well in this world, get an education, because it's going to become more and more rare that you meet people who are educated and learned about things and sort of can make decisions and be leaders in competent ways, which I don't think is crazy. Getting education is a good thing. I don't think it's crazy. And it's sad to see that we have a shortage of teachers and things. So in particular, too, that there's a real shortage of people who work with special ed kids, which I think are, obviously, I'm sure you guys know this, that are students that need a lot of attention, and, it's a stressful job, but that's one thing you guys may or may not know. I used to work with Bill Nye the Science Guy. That was sort of my early, how can I say, foray into the workspace. And I remember part of the things that we did as well, we would work with the Special Olympics, and the people who work with, the athletes like that have a lot of patience, and they're kind and caring individuals, and the world would benefit from having more people who work in those fields. So I have nothing but good things to say for people who go into education, and I think we should pay them more. And obviously, this is going to cause more inflation, et cetera. I get it, but I don't think it's crazy to say invest in our future, invest in our children, and encourage education for everybody. I can just tell you, I grew up poor, and education was the way out. I don't like living in a world where kids think their only way out is playing the lottery or bouncing a basketball, which, very few people are actually going to ever make that a job. I'm just keeping it real. And, I think if you want to guarantee your success, learn science, get a job in biomedical, get a job as a cybersecurity, get a job in engineering, electrical engineering, get your job in construction, get your job fixing cars. There's any number of jobs that you can do, but it starts with education, and, just teaching your kids to sit down and read a book and study, and turn off your phone and turn off your TikTok, these kind of things. So I know I'm going on and on to this, but it's sad to see that we have such a staffing shortage, and I get it. We don't pay these people enough, and they have to deal with a bunch of bratty kids. I really get it. So, it's a cultural problem, but there's still going to be good schools in the USA. It's just going to be the divide between the rich and the poor, and the divide between educated and uneducated keep getting bigger. It's hard to stop that range, but at the end of the day, I encourage you to always put your kids first and put education first. So that's enough for me talking about that, but I think it's just so terribly important. And this reminds me, like, the last story of the day is with NASA. it reminds me that we still have very talented and bright individuals in the USA, and NASA is also made up of usually international people. They bring people all around the world to come and work for NASA, right? And it's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL. It's always a big tour in LA if you guys never done the JPL tour. But they, I guess evidently it worked. They were taking that basic satellite. It was solar powered, rammed into an asteroid and changed the trajectory. So I guess an asteroid is not going to come kill us on planet Earth. So we're okay that way. And this is a kudos to everyone on that NASA team. And if you watch the video, it's pretty cool. So I'm all about NASA and science and education. So nothing but positive things about that. So I know it feels like things are falling apart and stuff like that, but just be aware if you're watching this in USA, that the American economy has survived many things, and the world looks to the USA. That's just the reality. The world looks to the USA for safety. It looks to the USA for the currency of the dollars being strong, and look to our education system. I mean, if you go to our top universities in the world, they are heavily international, where people all around the world want to come and study our universities because we have a very good education system. And so what's sad is that because there's a shortage, it's just a bigger divide, right? So it's not like none of the schools are going to be good. It's just that some of the schools will definitely fall behind. So I encourage you to go in education if you're looking for some sort of career. It's something that there is a need for, and there's always a need for good teachers. So thanks again for watching, everyone, and this has been your daily Uncut News.